Do you like brainless builds that don't require optimizing crit? If that's the case, then you've picked the right character. At C0, Nilou's pull value is pretty decent because she's got a ton of competitive 4-star swords and her artifact builds are also pretty easy to farm. From a casual perspective, I myself really enjoy Nilou because of her elegant animations, beautiful character design, and other casual aspects that I'm sure a lot of other players can relate to. She's not a must-pull character if you don't like her character design or gameplay, but I'm sure you don't need to hear that from me. I'm just here for those who have a new favorite character with Nilou and want to know how to maximize her potential. If this sounds like you, then you've come to the right place. There's a lot to cover in this video, and as always, this guide will contain Nilou's best artifacts and weapons, to in-depth playstyle analysis, and optimal team compositions. Without further ado, let's get this guide rolling. Starting off with the basics, I know there are some people that have expressed confusion with Nilou's kit, so let's tackle 3 crucial aspects that every Nilou player needs to understand. First, we have Nilou's elemental skill. Not gonna lie to you, when I first read her kit, I probably understood about 10% of it. So if you're still confused, here's a breakdown of how it works in Razor language. Elemental skill equals pirouette state. You can spam your normal attack or elemental skill in the pirouette state. Normal attack 3 times in pirouette state for 8 more seconds of Hydro Infusion. Elemental skill 3 times in pirouette state to create Hydro Ring around the character. Hydro Ring will apply wet status to enemies. And that's basically the gist of it. Getting the Hydro Aura to hover around your characters is officially called the Tranquility Aura, and it's used for when you want to quickly swap Nilou in and out. On the contrary, using her normal attacks and getting the Luminous Illusion uppercut slashes is for players who want to keep her on the field and see more of Nilou's beautiful attack animations. Normal attacking during the pirouette state and extending your Hydro Infusion is officially called the Lunar Prayer stance in her tooltip. Keep in mind that no matter which route you decide to go with Nilou's pirouette state, all of your damage is considered elemental skill damage no matter if you're pressing her normal attack or elemental skill button. Her pirouette state and extended Hydro Infusion from the Lunar Prayer stance will not benefit from normal attack damage bonuses like the 4-set Heart of Depth set effect. The second crucial aspect about Nilou that you need to understand is her energy generation. Like Child, you can hit enemies with the initial stance change of Nilou's elemental skill. The only difference here is that Nilou is guaranteed to generate 1 Hydro Particle and has a 50% chance to generate a second Hydro Particle by doing so. Afterwards, any of her elemental attacks can also generate 1 Hydro Particle. With her burst having a 70 energy cost and an 18-second cooldown, this puts her in the exact same boat as Kokomi. Nilou will have energy problems if you don't get a decent amount of energy recharge, so we'll address the specifics and how to fix her energy during the artifact and weapon sections. The third crucial thing you need to understand about Nilou is probably the easiest to understand. I'm talking about her core mechanic, Chalice's Bounty. Once you complete the 3rd attack of Nilou's pirouette state, you get a ton of different team buffs with the Chalice's Bounty. Between her 2 Ascension talents, she grants 100 EM to the team when enemies are hit by dendro attacks. Dendro cores become bountiful cores which explode in just about 1 second. Bountiful cores will have increased explosion range, and every 1000 HP that Nilou has above 30k HP will increase the damage of these bountiful cores. These buffs and effects give us all the direction we need when it comes to building Nilou and pairing her with teammates. In order to have the Chalice's Bounty effect take place, we can only have Dendro and Hydro units in our party. In a lot of my recent videos, I've dedicated a small portion of the guide to ICD talk and other in-depth theory crafting concepts. A handful of my viewers seem to enjoy this, so let's have a little talk about Nilou's ICD and Bloom team specifics. Nilou's internal cooldowns are very straightforward. Her elemental skill has the standard ICD of the 3-hit rule, so that means the damage from the initial stance change and also the 3rd attack of her pirouette state will apply Hydro to the enemy. Meanwhile, her elemental burst will apply Hydro on both the initial hit and the follow-up lingering Aeon hit. All things considered, this makes Nilou on the slower side of Hydro application. Her slower Hydro application is both a blessing and a curse depending on who you decide to pair her up with. If you know anything about the elemental gauge theory, it's good to know that Nilou applies 1 unit of Hydro on all of her skills and burst. It's also good to know how the Bloom reaction is unique with elemental gauges. With the Dendro Aura on the enemy, triggering Bloom with 1 unit of Hydro will consume the Hydro, but only subtract 0.5 units of Dendro on the enemy, leaving the Dendro Aura remaining. This means if we start out with Dendro, we can get 2 blooms in quick succession with Hydro applications. On the flip side, Dendro on Hydro is a 1-to-1 reaction, and we can only get 1 bloom if we go Hydro first, then Dendro second. This complicates things a lot when it comes to who you should build EM on for maximum bloom damage, but truthfully, this is not something you should worry about 90% of the time, since Nilou's Chalice's bounty buffs already put bloom damage in a respectable position. But if you are into theory crafting and you are worried about reaction ownership, then you have 2 routes that you can take with the limited Dendro and Hydro options that we currently have. You can guarantee that your Dendro character creates blooms by going triple Hydro and 1 Dendro unit with a full EM set. With Dendro Traveler and Kole, this can get a little overwhelming for the Dendro character, but a future Dendro character like Nahida could definitely try to output a couple more blooms than what we currently have. The other option is double Dendro with double Hydro, and is less of a guarantee when it comes to reaction ownership. Depending on how strong your 2 Hydro characters are with Hydro application, even when Hydro on Dendro only consumes 0.5 units of Dendro, you can still overpower the Dendro aura and get a lingering Hydro aura. More about teammate specifics will come in the team section, but double Dendro and double Hydro can utilize both elements as the main creator of Dendro cores. It's a much easier way to break into Nilou teams if you're not concerned about reaction ownership, since the 2 Dendro characters can battery each other for Dendro energy. Unlike the theory crafting that's really complicated, Nilou's artifacts are simple and unique. Nilou uses a lot of 2-set combinations, and instead of chasing that perfect 4-set, it makes it easier to mix and match your best pieces. Starting off with her best artifact combination, it's going to be the 2-set Tenacity of the Millelith with either the 2-set Gilded Dreams or the 2-set Wanderer's Troop. The 2-set Tenacity is a must-have on Nilou. She has a massive base HP stat, and the value you can get out of this 2-set is absolutely lucrative with her Ascension talent. We use a 2-set that gives EM alongside the 2-set Tenacity to further benefit any bloom reactions created by Nilou herself. If you happen to have some cracked 2-set Heart of Depth pieces, you can also use those instead of the 2-set Gilded or the 2-set Wanderer's Troop. Other artifact sets for Nilou are the full 4-set Tenacity of the Millelith and the 4-set Deepwood Memories. The 4-set Tenacity is super easy to understand. Less personal damage from Nilou, but it also maximizes her buffing capabilities for better damage for her teammates. The 4-set Deepwood Memories is simply something you want to use on Nilou if you have no one else to use it on. For example, maybe you're running a triple Hydro and a single Dendro setup. Your Dendro MC will have the 4-set Gilded Dreams to maximize bloom damage, and maybe in the future you move these gilded pieces onto your Nahida and run the same team. In this case, your only Dendro character will appreciate that Nilou is hitting enemies with her elemental skill damage and reducing the Dendro resistance. Looking into artifact stats, Nilou's best setup is going to be triple HP in the Sans Goblet and Circlet. Artifact substat focus is going to be HP%, energy recharge, EM, and flat HP. Triple HP is by far the easiest and most effective way to build Nilou at low constellations. We have no 4-star sword that offers HP as a main stat, so the bulk of your HP is going to be in artifacts. After HP, Elemental Mastery and Energy Recharge are the big focuses for Nilou. EM is pretty self-explanatory, but ER on the other hand is a little bit up in the air. Some other people may say, oh, you don't need to burst every rotation with Nilou. But I say that's blasphemy because who wouldn't want to admire that beautiful burst animation that she has? For that reason, if you want to cast your Elemental Burst every rotation, Nilou has a similar energy threshold compared to Kokomi. Around 180% energy recharge is where things start to get comfortable if you're not surrounding her with characters that generate a lot of Hydro energy, but this benchmark can increase or decrease depending on whether or not you do so. Good news for C0 Nilou owners, although her signature weapon is extremely good, her next best swords are all 4-star weapons, giving players a lot of variety and a lot of substitutes if you don't have many swords. Aside from her signature weapon, Nilou's best 3 options are going to be Sacrificial Sword, Xiphos Moonlight, and Favonius Sword. There are a variety of upside to all of these 3 weapons, so listen closely. To start off, Sacrificial Sword is extremely beneficial to players who want to on-field Nilou. Getting the cooldown reset passive will allow her to truly be an on-field driver and opens up great opportunities to use her with a character like Barbara, who has a little more potential as a healer than a Bloom Team driver. Moving into Xiphos Moonlight, this weapon is the perfect weapon to use on Nilou if you failed to get her signature weapon but happen to get this sword in the process. If you're trying to stack a ton of EM on Nilou through artifact substats, you're in luck because this weapon can convert a percentage of your EM into free energy recharge for the entire team. And at number 3, Favonius Sword is broken just like the rest of the Favonius weapon line. This is the perfect band-aid to Nilou's energy problem and also energy problems of your teammates. Enough said. Beyond these 3 main options, we also have other free-to-play options like Festering Desire, Sapwood Blade, and Iron Sting. Festering Desire is Nilou's best free-to-play option because it's only beaten out by her signature weapon for Nilou's personal hydro damage. However, I know many of you guys haven't been around since patch 1.2, so we also have Sapwood Blade and Iron Sting. The difference between these 2 weapons is not that large, but it should be pretty clear that Sapwood gives a more supportive playstyle with energy and a support passive, while Iron Sting is purely for selfish damage. And before we move on to Nilou's teams, here's a quick section to mention some of the oddball options that are commonly considered on Nilou. First up, let's talk Harbinger of Dawn and Primordial Jade Cutter. These weapons are a bait for 99% of Nilou players. Bloom is a transformative reaction, and by building crit, not only are you nerfing Nilou's bloom damage, but the entire team's bloom damage because you have to sacrifice HP for crit, which lowers the strength of her Chalice's bounty buff. The other option people consider is Freedom Sworn, which is actually not a bait on Nilou. It's not close to the best for her own personal damage, but like any other good weapon on Nilou, the utility is really what we look for. Use this sword with the 4-set tenacity of the Millilith, and you can turn Nilou into a pretty potent team buffer. It's clear that Hoyoverse wants to make Nilou the queen of bloom teams, but as I touched upon in the theory crafting section, there's a lot more to talk about than meets the eye. Let's continue where I left off with bloom teams, talking about the 2 options you have, triple hydro plus 1 dendro or double dendro with double hydro. The triple hydro setup is easier to understand. This team consists of Nilou, Barbara or Kokomi, Xingqiu or Yulan, and Dendro MC. Barbara or Kokomi are required for healing, while Xingqiu and Yulan are the fastest off-field hydro applications by far. What happens here is that Nilou alongside fast off-field hydro application ensures that the hydro aura is always on the enemy. We can then build our Dendro MC or Kole with full EM and guarantee that almost 100% of the bloom reactions will scale off their own EM. Pretty simple stuff. On the other hand, with double Dendro and double hydro, things get a little more complicated. If you don't care about reaction ownership, then this is the easiest team to pilot because having double Dendro will battery your 2 Dendro characters for energy and make it a lot easier for blooms to be created. To simplify things, the team will consist of Nilou, Barbara or Kokomi, Kole, and Dendro MC. If you use Kokomi, then what happens is that the reaction ownership can be all over the place. Generally, we can make either of our Dendro characters or Kokomi trigger most of the bloom reactions. With Kokomi's normal attacks, charge attacks, jellyfish, and Nilou's tranquility ring, there's a lot of hydro to go around, and you can try to overpower the Dendro and have a consistent hydro aura. If you use Barbara, then we can also make Nilou our character to proc blooms. With slow enough hydro application from Nilou's on-field hydro attacks, there's enough Dendro to go around as long as both Kole and Dendro MC are on the team. Barbara will hardly hog any reactions off-field, so Nilou is free to take the role of an on-field driver in her Lunar Prayer stance. Without Sacrificial Sword, you can also on-field Barbara and take advantage of Nilou's Tranquility Ring. Because this is your free-to-play setup, both on-field options are totally fine, and you should first worry about creating as many blooms as possible before worrying about reaction ownership. With new updates, there will be new Dendro and new Hydro characters, but for now, Nilou is in a little bit of an interesting spot for theory crafting teams. This may not be the perfect analysis of Nilou's potential bloom teams, but hopefully my testing and reasoning gave you an idea of where to start. There are other niche teams that people like to try out, such as Nilou Vaporize with Xiangling and Kazuha, or Nilou Taser with standard Taser characters like Fischl, Raiden Shogun, and Sucrose. I encourage you to play around with these teams just for fun, but for the sake of the video's length, I'm not going to cover any of these teams in depth today. Let me know down in the comments below your thoughts, builds, and teams for Nilou. Other than that, that's all I have time for today. If you enjoyed this guide or thought it was useful, be sure to support both the video and the channel. You can follow me on Twitch, Instagram, TikTok, or sub to the YouTube channel, whatever people do nowadays. Other than that, it's the same as always. I'll see y'all in the next one. Peace.